Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Okay, so I think this video, what it's going to be about is it's going to be about a way to have a direction in your life. Not just kind of sort of, but I mean a real direction that gives you power. So when I was young, I got involved in sports at a young age, and one thing that happened was boxing. So we moved to Wisconsin for a little while, about 6.5 years, and we have tornadoes there. And so we had a tornado, and we left the garage door open, which is probably a good thing so the wind doesn't blow it up, or the pressure. But the problem was, I think we had only lived there for a couple weeks. I can't remember what it was, but we had a lot of cardboard boxes in the garage. And they slowly were getting sucked out and towards, so that the tornado went over our house, and because we kind of lived in a little bit of a valley, so it would kind of go up the hill and kind of bounce over. So we were safe even though it went over us. So the point being is, we were watching these boxes get just sucked out of the garage, and the wind was insane. I mean, the trees were bending and every branch was being pulled in one direction. And so my mother tells us to go out there and get the damn fucking boxes. And this is wild. The winds were easily 60, 80 miles an hour. And I'm like, you're freaking nuts. So she literally yelled at us like to go out there and get the cardboard boxes. And so, oh my God, so we're running out there and the wind's just going insane. And we literally were getting knocked over by the wind, and we'd grab a cardboard box and it would lift us up off the ground, and we'd, fall on the ground. And so as the storm got slower and slower, we started to get the boxes and we're gathering them and stuff. And so the wind completely stopped when it was over, which is kind of typical of a tornado. Like all of a sudden, boom, it's just done. There's like no wind. So we were out there getting the cardboard boxes and we brought them inside. And me and my brother were outside. I think we might have still been getting a couple of that went into the neighbor's yard and up against their fence, but what I remember was in the yard wrapped around kind of I'm going to call it the front side because it faces one street, and then it wraps around to the front of the house where the actual front is facing another street. So we were like on call it the first part, the front side. And some kids pulled up. Now they lived across the street from our cousins, and so we knew them. And they pull up, and their dad pulls up in their old beat up car, and they pull over and they yelled something out, and I was like, what? And they said, do you want to go boxing? And I was like, boxing? Hell. And I thought they meant like go to the factory where you put the cardboard boxes together. I was like, hell no. I go, and I lifted up a box and said, you mean put boxes together? They're like, no, boxing. And he started throwing his fist out the window. And my brother Gary goes, no. And I go, hell yeah. And I ran. They opened the door. I literally jumped in the car and I got hooked on boxing. Man, I was so excited. Talking about a happenstance. Like they just happened to pull up at the right time, said the right thing. Boom, I just jumped in, right? I was freaking hooked from day one, and I don't even know why. And I put my heart and soul into it. So here's the message of the story. That goal to become the state champion meant life to me. It meant the world to me. It was everything in the world to me. Nothing was more important. Here's the really interesting thing that happened, and I learned many, many years later. I think it was even after high school when I was studying psychology, or maybe studying personal development and going to Tony Robbins seminars. Something was saying, whenever you have a real life goal, you have a real purpose, a real direction, everything else falls into place. And they said the reason is because there becomes suddenly an automatic hierarchy of things that are the most important. What's next, most important, and next, because you have this ultimate goal. Like this is the goal. Everything else comes after this. Now here's the really funny thing. You would have thought that my grades would have gone down. You would have thought that I would have quit being I had 4 paper routes at the time, 2 in the morning and then 2 after school. No. In fact, I think at the time I had 1 paper route, and I ended up having 4 later on. So you would have thought that I would have done worse in school, or worse in school sports, or worse in my other areas of my life, or missed going to church. No, here's the funny thing about it. You actually do better because now everything has an order. My grades actually jumped up. The more I got into boxing, the more intense, like, what else can I do? What else can I do? And then my coach is like, well, do you jog like in the morning or after school? It's like, no. I was like, and then I watched the Rocky movie. That's when the Rocky came out. And he would always get up like at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he would go running like 6 miles or 7 miles or whatever it was. And he then at one point he was eating raw eggs. He'd blend in a blender, I think with milk or water, I forget what it was. And then I was doing that. And next thing you know, I went from doing 25 push-ups and 25 jumping jacks and 25 sit-ups to 250 every day, then 75, then 100. Then I finally got up to like 200 each, etc., etc. And what ended up happening was I was like, you know what? I have to get up earlier in the morning now. So then I was getting up at 5, and then it was 4:45, then 4:30. And at one point, I was waking up, I think it was at 4 o'clock in the morning, because I had to get this entire workout done. And then I had to eat breakfast, and then I had to study before I went to school. Before I joined boxing, I didn't do any of that. My grades were probably average, probably B's or so. Wasn't bad by any means, but it wasn't straight A's. And that's the thing. Also, my grades just boom went up to the ceiling. Everything in my life, I took on more responsibilities. I took on more paper routes. I was making more money. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because there is an ultimate purpose for why you're here on the planet. In fact, I believe this is the reason you're here. So in the last video, I talked about parts, okay? And we talked about parts integration and parts separation. And when you have that separation, it causes a parts conflict because a part of you wants to do A over here to the left, and the other part of you doesn't want to do that. It wants to do this other thing over here to the right. So now you're being pulled in two different directions. So like I said in the last video, it's like you will literally hear yourself or your friends say, a part of me wants to get this, but another part of me doesn't. So now you have the internal tug of war, the internal conflict. And if you pay close attention, literally one of their hand will kind of open up like they're holding a part in that hand and with the palm faced up and say, well, part of me wants to do this. And then the other hand pops up, and they'll look over to the other hand, or at least in that direction go, but another part of me wants to do this. What should I do? This is parts conflict. This means you are not congruent. You're incongruent, which causes like kind of this tug of war inside, and it's exhausting and tiring, and it's kind of a waste of time. And it can cause you to kind of do something then not do it, like go on a diet but then give up on it, like 5 days later. Now on this channel we've talked about narcissist abuse and avoidance, okay? So one of the things we learn from dealing with narcissists is who to cut out of our life, to look for the red flags, to see what they're doing wrong, and to catch it earlier before you get all psychologically screwed up and you have to be in therapy for 5 years and you can't be around people for a while, right? Now, since I'm on the avoidant kick right now, one of the things that I'm realizing about avoidance is they have a lot of conflict inside, like a tremendous amount of conflict inside. But I also think that you, if you're an empath or a light worker, at one point in time, you had a lot of conflict inside. And believe it or not, but that there's something that it creates pressure. Now, for avoidance, they have this like these real, like they want love so bad, they want physical affection really, really bad, but then when they get close to it or they actually get it, then they run away because they're afraid, because that means they're going to be vulnerable. That means somebody might take away their freedom or whatever. They have all these different fears, okay? One part of them wants to go forward and the other part wants to go in the other direction. So the way we talk about this in NLP is it's like a car with two engines. One engine is going in one direction, the other one's going the complete opposite. So you got this back and forth kind of tug of war and you don't really go anywhere. So here is the purpose of life. At the very least, and I think this actually is the purpose of life, because everything you do moves in this direction if you push yourself, if you go after it. It's to harness the conflicts in your life in such a way that they actually give you more power to go in the direction that you want. I believe the reason why we're here is to begin to develop this flow state to where we're using this energy instead of it conflicting, going head to head against each other or pulling apart in two different directions. We're supposed to guide this energy in a way, the stress, the frustration, in a way that gets you going down in the same direction. So in NLP, what we say is like, it's like, imagine instead of having two engines pulling each other in opposite directions, what we do is we get both engines to go in the same direction, and now you have no resistance. So instead of 100% resistance, now you have 100% energy and power going in the same direction. Now that is the goal of life. Now listen to Chester Bennington here from Linkin Park.
Do you feel cold and lost in desperation? You build up hope, but failure's all you've known. Remember all the sadness and frustration, and let it go. Let it go.
Now, I played that over and over and over. It is a beautiful song. I actually just uploaded it onto my YouTube channel. Not here, but in the mentions or whatever it's called. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. So it's in an area called Published, where you can upload images and videos, etc. So if you want to listen to it, you can listen to it there. And the name of it is, let's see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, here it is. So the name of this is Linkin Park Iridescent. IRIDESCENT. Linkin Park. And it says Chester B _fan _page. So hopefully you can find that on there, okay? Because it's beautiful. Without they took out the music. It's just his voice. And I sang to it for probably 20 minutes. That's that little 20-30 second clip. And it sounded really close, if not exactly like Chester. I sang in choir for 13 years, in everything from church to elementary, middle school, high school, to college, to Napa Choral Society, etc. So I have a pretty good voice actually when I'm in harmony, and that song brought me into harmony, and the whole cascading of thoughts came crashing down on me, and I started to realize, like, that's why we're here. The real purpose, I kind of said it earlier, but the purpose, if I could put into word, is to find or bring into our existence harmony. So here's what I wrote, where I posted it on my YouTube channel in that section. I think it's called it says posts right here. So sorry, I call it published. It says posts. So I wrote this: the goal of life, of God, of the universe, of the teachings of Christ and Buddha is harmony. How to take your spirit, soul, and all the contrast, the conflict within you and without, and bring it all into harmony, harnessing the power of all this energy to move in a direction, in a way that is much more powerful, enjoyable, and moves in the direction of your heart's desire, so you can achieve all of your dreams and goals and enjoy the entire process. And I put, now let's get this ship moving, because I look at it like a big, massive ship. I always kind of come back to ships, because I think life, in a way, is like you have this big ship that needs lots of energy, lots of power, and you have to move it in a direction. Now, the reason why Chester Bennington, I think, is such a good example of this, because if you know anything about him, he was really torn inside. He had massive conflicts, emotional conflicts that just tore him apart, okay? And he never escaped those, call it demons, if you will, or I would like to call it conflicts that really, it just ripped his heart apart. And he became fairly public about it towards the end, and then some stuff came out after he died, some things that had actually physically were done to him when he was younger. It's kind of a sad thing. Now, you guys listen to me now, and you hear a very calm, kind of down-to-earth, grounded voice. And I would say most of you that have been on this channel for the last 3, 4, 5 years, you really got to meet a version of me that wasn't in existence until I did a ton of energy healing work, and I mean a ton of meditation, a ton of energy healing work, a ton of therapy, a ton of integrating my charges and my parts, conflicts, etc. So what I realized as I look back in life is, okay, I'm looking at avoidance right now. I'm specifically thinking of someone right now who's very important to me, means a lot to me. And she has a lot, God, what's the word? It's like they have this internal conflict that is going on that affects their external life. And what I'm trying to say is there is a pressure there. There is a power in there that if you can, it's like, how to explain this? Hold on a second. Okay, I got it. It's like electricity. If you do not ground the electricity, if you do not give electricity a direction to go in, it will literally just spark and spark and spark and explode and start fires and cause a lot of chaos and problems. So if you're in your life and you're experiencing like lots of conflict, lots of chaos, it's because you have the energy, which is a good thing. The challenge is the energy, number one, doesn't have a circuit, a direction to go in, to complete a circuit. The other thing is the energy is not grounded. If you go to your telephone poles, I don't think it's every single one, but I think it's every fifth telephone pole or something. But I can think of one right now. It's on the corner about 2 or 3 blocks away because I walk by it. There's literally a wire that comes down the side of it and goes down into the ground. That is literally the grounding wire. When you look at your wall and you look at the plug-in, look at it, there's 3 holes. There's the positive, the negative, and there's that third bottom one. Well, you'll notice sometimes you have just 2 prongs. Those are usually for the smaller devices that don't use much voltage or wattage. But then you have the one that has the third one that goes in that third hole. Well, those are the ones that usually open up and receive a lot more energy and power, so they need to be grounded, meaning there's literally a wire on the other end of that connects to a larger wire that literally goes down into the earth. So instead of looking at life like it's black or white, like everything has to be perfect, you got to achieve every goal the first time you do it, every single time, you have to start looking at it as this is the development of your harmony. The reason and purpose why you're here is to take your sails, to turn them, to tighten them, to aim them in a certain direction together in harmony, to work with the wind, to work with the pressure of life. And to directionalize it in a way that you begin to flow. Now this is literally, if I could pick out one thing, like what do you do with all the energy healing, hypnosis, psychology, therapy, NLP that I do, we're getting people's energy to begin to integrate and to work in harmony. To utilize that power that's within. Now, it's not like there's one thing or the other, like I have to have everything in me healed. No, it's not that, because when I did sports in high school, I had a lot of conflicts. It's learning how to work within the conflicts, to guide the conflicts, to develop techniques such as, warming up and stretching beforehand, to get yourself into a better state of mind. There's a series of things that you learn and develop, whether you're a banker, whether you're a businessman, whether you're a motorcycle racer, whether you're a mother, to get your family, to get your school, to get your team to work in harmony. Every sport I did, in the beginning you're just hectic, like you're learning how to throw a jab in boxing and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Like, what? There's no power in that, coach. He's like, just keep working on it. It'll happen. It'll come. And then he teaches you the overhand right. So now you got to jab the overhand right. Like, oh, this is kind of awkward, coach. It doesn't work. He goes, keep working on it. It's going to come. And then once you get good at that, then he throws in the left hook and he goes, lift your elbow up. You got to have your hand turned over. It's got to be turned like this. And you're going, man, this is just awkward. Like this, you feel like you're never going to get there is what I'm saying. But here's the thing, you keep working at it and working at it and working at it, and boom, next thing you know, I remember my first couple boxing matches, I was stumbled and fumbled. I lost my first one, but I only lost by 1 point to the former state champion. The next one I won, but it was it was 2 guys that were stumbling and bumbling and kind of almost falling over, but I kept at it, and you would be surprised how fast you'll get into a flow state. I was so dedicated. I think it was about 9 months later that I ended up winning the state champion. I was running 7 miles in the morning, 200 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, 200 jumping jacks, stretching like a mad crazy person, shadow boxing, and then boom, running 7 miles, almost at a full sprint. And then my point being is, I pushed myself. I pushed the energy, I pushed everything, I developed, and I paid attention, and you start to find harmony. And I remember the match. I was losing in the first round, and I knew I was better than the other guy, and my coach said, keep your hands up, keep your elbows in. And I go, Coach, I can't win that way. I'm better than this guy. And so finally, in the second round, he said, keep your elbows in. And for about the first 5-10 seconds, maybe I did it. I don't remember. But I remember going out there going, screw that shit. I'm just going to throw. And I just opened up and I balanced out. And all of a sudden, snap, 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 move, snap. And everything flowed. And I beat, we were little kids, so we couldn't really hurt each other. We didn't have that much power. But I beat the crap out of this kid when it came to actually hitting him more than he hit me. And I was avoiding his punches. I was moving. You know, they say, like Muhammad Ali used to say, fight like a butterfly, sting like a bee. And that's exactly what it was like. Here, this little kid's bouncing around the ring, you know, sticking his jab, just a stiff jab, just boom, just the way it was supposed to be done. And after the fight, everyone was like, my coach was like, where did you learn how to do that? And I go, Coach, I can't fight the way you teach me. It doesn't work for me. And I literally said to this little kid, I go, I just have to flow. Where it came from was when I would shadow box after I did my warm-ups, my push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, all that stuff. And then I'd shadow box for probably another 30 minutes or so before I ran. And that's where I developed. I would just snap, move, double punch, boom, 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 left hook. And I began to develop it in that. But when I came to practice, coach was like, okay, put your hands together, put your fist next to your cheeks. And it was just sort of like I was in this box and I had to get out. So here's my messages for you. Number one, everything you do is to develop you to begin to see where the pitfalls are, what you're doing wrong, to correct it, maybe go to therapy, do some parts integration, maybe do some timeline therapy, heal some emotions from the past. But the goal is to begin to get things to work more and more in alignment, in congruency, to flow. You get your power from flow. The way a car goes really fast is not by having this brick wall in front of it. No, they make everything streamlined so the car goes faster because it's flowing through the air, not like resisting like a big Mack truck, which got this big square front that's just, the wind's just resistant. You want least resistance. This applies to relationships and marriage, and this absolutely applies to avoidance, okay, or any of us. See, avoidance, you've got all this conflict going on inside, so you need to learn to work with the conflict. You need to learn to learn from the conflict and where you make your pitfalls and what's not working. Here it is right here. You want to go in a good direction? Are you getting what you want out of life? And if you're not, what's not working? And start to figure that out. Or hire someone to get help to help you figure that out. A marriage is the same way. A successful marriage will work if you have two people coming together, doing their best to work in harmony, just like a football team. You have a common goal. You're going in this direction. You know, a lot of churches are like, oh, God's got to be number one. God's got to be number one. And which I agree with. But it's like, what does that mean? If you were to ask them that, they'd be like, well, I don't know. All right, let me compare this to like a football team. So here's what happens. When you have a goal, like, okay, in my senior in high school, like, we wanted to win the section championship. That was the furthest you could go in the state of California back then. Now, they actually have a state championship where they have the section champions of the entire state compete against each other. So in the beginning of the year, you do double days. Okay, we did triple days in Napa, where I'm from. So you're tired, you're bitching and complaining, you're beat up, you're bruised, you're exhausted, you've just been out in the heat from the morning all the way till about 4 or 5 p.m. You're just exhausted, tired, and you yell at each other and you scream, but you have a common goal. And that's the one thing that we literally, in 9th grade, we came together because one of the coaches called us together and said, hey, you guys got to make a decision. You have the talent. You guys can do it. But you have to have one thing. You all have to want it. If you all have to want it, you'll make it happen. He goes, if your parents move away, find a way to get back to this team. If this happens, find a way to get back on the team. He goes, I don't care what happens, but each and every one of you have got to stay with this team and you will win. Well, guess what? We took first place as freshmen, and then the next year my mother moved us away to another town about an hour away in the same league, but I actually ended up finding a way to move back to Napa to stay on the same team. I actually ended up living with my football coach. And then that went south, so I ended up living in my uncle's garage. Yeah, in high school. while I was getting straight A's. I was living in a garage next to his freaking car that he'd pull in like about 3 in the morning and wake me up every night when he pulled in. Okay, I was living on a dirty, greasy couch. But it didn't matter, and I still had straight A's. Nothing here. Okay, now watch this. So here comes football day, right? We're the day of football where everyone's uptight, everyone's stressed, you're nervous. So normally what happens is different football players will do radically different things. Okay, now here's the really weird thing, because you're in such an intense state of mind, everything in your power, you want to win this game. So you got this guy over here drinking coffee and he's jacked up through the roof, talking fast and fidgeting. It doesn't bother you. And then you got this guy over here smoking pot because he says it mellows him out and gives him a clearer mind. Now, this is one of our best players, and I didn't know this until the very end of the season. When I caught him, I was captain of the football team. I got pissed off. He goes, Mike, you don't understand. He goes, I play better. Now, here's the thing. He was our best defensive back on the team, and this dude was awesome. I mean, this guy was talented. I was like, really? I go, doesn't screw you up? He goes, Mike. He goes, I've been doing it every game of the year. I'm like, really? Because we were in the playoffs at this point. I'm like, what? And I'm thinking, what are you doing? He's like, Mike, I do it every game. I was like, oh. And then his friend had said, Mike, he's been doing it since we were freshmen. I was like, all right. So normally something like that would have not been cool. But here's the thing. Because it was working, it worked for him, I let it slide. And most people, when someone's over here jacked up on caffeine, fidgeting and acting weird and biting their, they're like, dude, just relax. But no one said that. It didn't bother anybody because we had this common goal. So some guys would do deep breathing, would stretch, would meditate. I was one of those guys that actually meditated before the games. I did it in kickboxing too. It worked for me. For other guys, they had to do caffeine. They had to get jacked through the roof. It just depends. Some guys, the offensive linemen would get together and they'd go outside and do their own little thing. And it didn't matter. Here's my point. It's like you had a locker room full of guys from different family backgrounds, different histories, different cultures, different races, different colors, different food, different everything, even different ways to cope with the nervousness of the game. And in that moment, everything was okay. It's like you were in your own little bubble, and whatever it takes to make it happen, that was fine. Now imagine having a marriage like that. All of a sudden you're overlooking the things like they had a nervous tick and you'd say, don't do that, stop that, and you're just bitching and moaning about the little things. If you're bitching and moaning about things, it's because you don't have a common goal. You don't have a common direction. You don't have a common dream. A dream that is so powerful that it drives you to get to the top. Because all of a sudden, instead of looking at the person, I don't like when you do that because I don't do that. You look at them, go, whatever it takes, man. You allow them to be in their own little bubble, in their own little space, to do whatever it is that they need to do to get to the goal. To pull you out of your muck, you have to realize your goal is to develop harmony in your relationships, in your friendship, in your business, in your life. That is the goal, is to begin to develop and harness the power, the conflicts, and the energy inside you and also outside of you. That is the goal. So once you have an ultimate goal, such as winning a section championship or making $1 million a year or $1 million a month in business, all of a sudden it gives people direction, and you take all that energy and you begin to guide it in a certain direction. Okay, so on my goddaughter's softball team, there was this girl that was a golfer. She was a really good golfer. She'd been competing since she was a kid. And on the softball team, my coach was like, hey, pitch some balls to her, blah, 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 so she can get her hitting practice in. And she was literally golfing. I'm like, what are you doing? I go, no, you got to snap it over like this. And the two coaches go, no, Mike. I know it's weird, but believe it or not, that actually works for her. She's our best hitter. I'm like, seriously? Man, this girl would crank it. And it was and the coach said, I know, Mike, it's the weirdest thing in the world. Just let her do her thing. Right now, because we were going into the playoffs, he goes, it is too late to adjust her swing at this time and part of the season. She goes, she does it well. It works for her. Just let her do it. My point in sharing this with you is not about perfection. It's about adjusting and working with what you have and moving in a direction. to get as many of the pieces to work together as powerfully and as much flow as you possibly can to get to the goal. Again, it's not about perfection, because some of the pieces just won't work, so you leave them aside. The key or secret to life, the power, where the power comes from, is having a powerful, powerful goal. Something that drives you beyond. Here's the funny thing. Football is a collision sport that once they hike that ball, everyone is going 100 miles an hour just like that. It's like everyone's sprinting in different directions. Believe it or not, but there is a harmony in that. And that is, here's the funny thing, that's the number one goal of football. One of our offensive linemen said after our season when he got interviewed, he goes, sometimes we would sputter at the beginning of games, but once we got in sync, we flowed. It's working through the conflicts. It's working through the hardness. It's working through the collisions. It's working through it to begin to create more and more and more harmony. It's not like an either or. You're going to be out of sync, but then you got to fight to get back in sync and to stay in sync. And then once you get knocked out, you fight to get back in sync. That is the goal of life, to keep moving back in that direction of being in sync so you have power and flow. Life was never meant to be perfect. It was never meant to be this easy thing that you just flow. It's supposed to be this conflicting, crashing collision that somehow, some way you find a way to create flow within all of that. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, please click subscribe, click the like button, go ahead and make a comment, and if you want, go ahead and make a donation. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. And as usual, you can buy any of my dating and relationship coaching books that will also help support this channel. God bless you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.